Our final speaker today has lived the life #choose to challenge. Sue's been a very close friend and confidant for over 30 years, and we've certainly shared our successes and our not so grand moments. While Sue has been influential in my business and personal life, she also stepped in and supported me in the guidance and raising of my children, hence the background of Elizabeth. Sue is a woman who is resilient, capable, trustworthy, reliable, and her wisdom has been invaluable to me over the years. Sue and I have forged our own paths into our own careers, but shared our business experiences. Sue's consulting practice is all about unleashing the potential of people, bringing over 25 years into the human resources and talent pool. I'm really honoured to be able to call her my friend and to share her with you all today. Thank you.
Well, firstly, there's a few ladies and gents that I know in the room, and good to see you under such an awesome circumstance and celebrating International Women's Day. As Leanne said, I've had an amazing career. Leanne and I met, I was a little bit younger than Leanne, still am. That doesn't change. We've known each other for 33 years, and I first remember meeting Leanne because she came into the office where I was working in the admin team, and she was the 20-something-year-old accountant that I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. How to become an accountant? So interestingly, I started to go down the path of studying accounting and quickly realised that wasn't for me. But that came from Leanne. I looked at her and thought, wow, that's kind of where I want to go. I've had a 25-year career in HR, recruitment, talent strategy. I now work with organisations on how they can align their people strategy to their company strategy to really make a difference. And it's hard, and a lot of companies really get that wrong. I've had the luxury of travelling the world. I've, worked with big corporates. I've worked in organisations in professional services, oil, gas, mining, the military, both here in Australia and globally. When I decided to get off the treadmill of the corporate world in about 2016, it took me about a year to disengage from that and get off that churn that you just keep going all the time. And I questioned myself quite significantly during that time as to what the heck, who am I when I'm not the identity of working for that corporate organisation? And there was a few people that helped me ground myself. And Leanne was one of those. My mother, interestingly, I took Mum away for a week and we just hung out together and we had some really good conversations about what was real. And then my husband said to me, you need to be happy being you. You need to be happy being a part of our family. And then you need to work the other shit out. You need to work that out once you know who you are. And that was in my mid-40s. I just turned 50 a couple of weeks ago. And by the time I was 50, I thought I'd have it together. And I'm pretty proud of where I've gotten to. And by the time I'm 55, I kind of know where that's going to go to as well. I think, anyway. I'll come back to you in 5 years and let you know what happens. But one of the things that I'm really passionate about is being an advocate for women in leadership. I'm not a bra-burning feminist by any stretch, but when it comes to supporting women and uplifting women, we all have a role to play in doing that. Everyone in this room does. And as I said, I've played on the global stage for many, many years, but my passion here now is in Australia. I've got clients that I still work with globally, but I'm really, really focused on this country. I think there's some benefits of women in leadership in a COVID world, and leadership in a COVID world and what that looks like. And that doesn't mean leadership in a corporate or a work environment only. It means within your community, and Trish has given us some amazing examples. Elizabeth from supporting women into STEM, which is such a critical endeavour for us as a country and globally. I love to see ladies in high vis in the room. Thanks for wearing it proud. All right, I'm assuming my clicker's going to work today. Let's give it a go. All right, I want to talk to you about the gender gap and the World Economic Forum. They measure that annually and been doing that for 14 years, and it's got some pretty telling statistics for us to look at. How Australia stacks up in that arena, what the lay of the land looks like in professions in this country, why I'm passionate about it and what we can do to close that gap, because everybody's got a responsibility. We're talking to one of the ladies on the table here this morning about global warming. If nobody cared, nothing would change, but everyone has the opportunity to make a difference. So let's have a look at some of these statistics with my clicker working. Okay, so the global gender gap has been run by the World Economic Forum for 14 years, and it surveys 53 countries every year. Has anyone seen it? Anyone know what I'm talking about? Raise your hand. Yeah, good stuff. So what I want to show you is some of the results. So the 4 things that are reviewed on an annual basis are the educational attainment, the health and survival, economic participation and political empowerment. So these are the 4 things for the past 14 years that 53 countries have been viewed against, right? So think about this from if I'm sitting in country A, I'm measuring myself against myself, yep, not against other countries for this particular statistic. So for educational attainment, the percentage of women attaining the same as men is 96% based on those 53 countries. Health and survival is 97%, so they're pretty good, right? So that tells us that women and men have the same opportunities to attain in the country that they're in. Yeah, this is where it starts to get ugly. Economic participation, which means women in professional roles making a difference in the economy, and political empowerment. This is where it gets really awful, right? Yep, and we know why. I'll talk about that in a minute. So the overall average is 69%. So you'd think 69% is pretty good, but it's really not, right? That's a 30% difference in the difference between the gender of male and female within those 53 countries on an average. So let's have a look at Australia and how we stack up. I always love a clicker that works. Let me go closer. Here we go. So Australia's ranked number 44, but we went backwards in the last year. We dropped 5 percentage points. Does anyone know anything about the Nordics and how awesome they are when it comes to closing the gap in gender? Yep, that's why they're up the top. Look at them, Iceland, Norway, Finland, Sweden. That hasn't changed for a long, long time. We've got a long way to go to catch up to those countries. I don't know what my next slide is. Let's just have a look. Okay, so this piece here, I'm going to have to, sorry if you can't see in front of me here. So what this shows is the difference in the professions of what sits in male and female predominantly. This is globally. So if you look at the share of professional clusters, I think there's some pretty stereotypical standouts here. So people and culture, predominantly female, which is HR, right? Used to be called personnel when I started. Things like sales is kind of not too bad of a balance. We're starting to get a little bit more relevant there. But then it starts to go the other way, which is, a lot more males in engineering roles. I think Elizabeth and others in the room are an example of trying to shift the dial on that. And then, if you really look at it, we've got some of the STEM specific employment or professional clusters down the bottom there, which we obviously need to make a difference on as well. So that's globally. So in Australia, it's a little bit more spread, which has a bigger gap than what globally there is. So we need to look at how we have to close that gap as well. This is where, when you start to look at the layers, it gets really interesting. So for workforce participation, 47% of people employed in Australia are female, but of the permanent workforce, only 40% of them are women. So when you start to break that down, we've got professions that are stereotypically women. We've got a participation rate of about 50%, but then 40% of those are only 40% of those women are full-time. So you start to see why we've got challenges of women not rising to leadership and women not moving into senior positions. These figures here, I mean, you can do your own views and research. I was just looking through this the last couple of weeks or so. 14% of chaired positions in Australia are females, 18% CEOs, but 32% of boards have no females on them. None at all. And then only less than 1% have no males. So how are we going to make a difference when we don't put ourselves out there? So I'll talk about that in a second and the role that I like to play in sort of encouraging those things. So when you layer that down, right, we've got challenges from a professional cluster perspective. We've got challenges from a participation and a permanent versus part-time perspective. I mean, I see some great examples, very few examples of women in part-time roles that can rise to leadership or job share to leadership. There's one famous CEO role that's shared with 2 women. But that's very uncommon. And then, as you can see, sorry, as you can see, as we go through the roles that can actually make a difference and influence, the numbers start to stack even further away from women. So I think there's some pretty important things here. I'm just going to show you something. I hope technology works for me here. We'll see how we go. You can have a look at this link yourselves in time. But I was looking at this the other day, and I'll just quickly show you. Oh, it's not going to work on the screen. Oh, I didn't test that one. No, I'm going to go. I'll send you the link later. But there's a cool link called Closing the Gender Gap. And if you put your statistics in, and I put mine in, I'm just turned 50, it's going to take 215 years. Sorry, I'll be 215 by the time the gender gap is closed if we don't do anything differently. 215, I'm not going to live that long. And it also showed me that for every dollar that I, as an Australian woman, earns, a male will earn $1.59. That's enormous, right? And I don't believe in total disclosure, but I believe in equity. And there's a big role for organisations to play, and I've had promotions, I've led big teams of people in my past, and women don't put themselves forward. I don't want to be stereotypical, but a man will put himself forward if he's got 80% of the capability and the rest is just the balls to do it. And the women, if they've got 70% capability, they may give it a shot. And I had some pretty poignant times in my career where I just thought, shit, I'm going to give it a shot. And I ran hard, and I fought hard to ensure that I could actually deliver on what I thought I was required to do. Again, I can't remember my next slide. Let's see where we go now. If my clicker will work. Hang on. Don't you love it when it works? Hang on a sec. I'm just going to go old school. That's me. Now I just want to talk about me, why I'm passionate about the work that I do and the awesome people that I connect with. And it comes down to a few things. Firstly, I'm a wife, my awesome husband of 23 years, not without its challenges, I think Tricia, you said. I forgot your husband's name. Michael. Sometimes, my husband and I have a policy, one of us has to love each other. We don't have to both love each other at the same time, but as long as one does, we're all right, we can make it through. Thankfully, we've done that quite well. We don't always like each other, and I think last year we were pretty borderline, to be honest. So, number one, I'm a wife, and I take that, with what it's required to be. I'm a mother. I have 2 children, and I've recently had my niece, who's 15, move in with us from Canada. She's an amazing swimmer. She's so courageous. She moved to Australia. I've known her since she was born, and she's disqualified for the Australian Swim Championships in April in the Gold Coast. She's a dual citizen, Canadian Australian citizen. So, that's not a small feat for my husband and my family and I to take Olivia into our home. I take that role so seriously. Her mother and father have given me the accountability and responsibility to be the mentor for her for this next 1 to 2 years of her life living in Australia. We're swim parents now, which is bloody hard, so I wasn't really signed up for that one. When I say we, it's my husband, because he does the swim runs, not me. That's that wife-husband partnership piece. And then I'm a daughter as well. I've got a pretty amazing mum. And, gosh, I'm going to start to cry now. You don't realise how cool your mother is until you're a mother, possibly, or how important she is. And I reflect often on her life, and even my grandparents, and Leanne, you mentioned your grandmothers as well, the amount of support that they give you. So I used to have a job with a PA and a big team of a couple hundred people, and my mum was my other PA. She's my fairy, and she still does so much to keep our household intact and stable, and, not just mentioning doing the laundry for us, but meals turn up in the fridge when we've been away. There's groceries in the fridge and fresh things in the cupboard. So I think, the importance that I have is these amazing people in my life, and that's what keeps me really focused from a personal perspective. But now I want to talk about some of my life stories in my career. And there's 3 things that I want to focus on. The first one is about knowing yourself. The second one is about role modelling. And the third one is it takes a village for this stuff to work really well, okay? So knowing yourself is a really important part of feeling confident and competent to do what you do in your life. And I got a couple of stories. So, I started my real career in my 20s, mid-20s, and it was in a role called personnel manager back then, right? And then it moved into HR. And I was a part of a group of up-and-coming managers within an organisation that were predominantly male. And I distinctly remember going to a leadership offsite, right, in Manly back in probably, 2001. And I was probably one of 3 females in the room. And we did one of those profiles beforehand, whether it's Myers-Briggs or one of those competency and personality profiles. And when we got our results the morning that we arrived there, has anyone seen those spider graphs where it plots everybody? Yeah? I was out here. I was so different from the rest of the people in that room. I almost felt embarrassed and ashamed that I was different. And at the time, I knew no different, and I wanted to not be asked any questions. I wanted to not be, contemplated a conversation of, well, what do you think about this, Sue? Because you genuinely think differently than the rest of us. And I can still remember sitting at my desk, sitting at the table here thinking, please don't ask me a question, please don't ask me a question. I don't want to be put on the stage to have a conversation about this. But that was my first realisation that I had the right to choose to challenge, but I didn't know how to do it back then. I was early 20s. And I found it very, very tough at that stage. We're talking, if you reflect on the conversation that Elizabeth had with us around the focus on women and the focus on changing the mindset and closing the gap, there was no dialogue around that back then. And through that sort of 5 to 10 years of my career, I found it very challenging to speak out. I think we've all heard of the imposter syndrome. Yep, so you're sitting in your room and think, oh my God, how did I make it here? I don't know, someone's going to pull me out at any point because there's no way that I should be in this room. I don't have that so much anymore. Every now and then I have to check myself for the door and go, it's okay, Sue, you're meant to be here, it's fine. But I was talking to one of the ladies down at the table here, and for many years of my career at Manpower Group, which is a global staffing organisation, I worked with the Australian Defence Force and the military, and I'd be presenting to uniform, lots of badges and stripes on their arms. And at one point, one of the senior ranked personnel in a presentation I was doing really hammered me on something, which was fine. It happens often, and as long as you're confident in what you're doing. But he came up to me afterwards because he was dragged over the coals for being so firm on a female that wasn't in a uniform. And I said to him, I welcome that. If you want to ask me questions around the things that I feel confident about, I'll answer them. If I can't, I'll divert or I won't answer your question. But I think, that's one example I've been in, mining, gas, oil, engineering, professional services, banking. The challenges don't sit within particular industry sectors as well. So I think the first part is, know yourself and what it is that you can do and should do, and then be really confident to be authentic about that to the best of your ability. One of my girlfriends the other week said to me, do those people that you work with know what you really like? I said, yeah, I think they do. I hope they do because, sometimes the crazy gets out, but mostly I'm authentic about what it is that I'm doing, and that wasn't my way many years ago, and that having the confidence to be who you are and breaking down the imposter syndrome is a really important thing, I think, for not only for women but for anyone. And the second piece that I wanted to talk through is role modelling. So I've got a couple of examples where I remember being in an office in another country with the company I was working for. And, I had a fairly senior role during my last stages of my career at Manpower Group. So my name was known within the organisation. And what I didn't realise was that the way that people watch and listen or learn from what it is that you do. I think I was quite naive to that point back then. But one of the young ladies in the office said to me, Sue, I'd really love to be like you one day and what it is that you're doing. And that was my first realisation of the importance of role modelling. And I didn't take that very lightly. And then from that point onward, I'm forever conscious about how I present myself, and I don't mean presenting, but how I position myself when I meet people, how I position myself in business and in social scenarios. But more importantly, how I position myself with upcoming leaders and upcoming women leaders within organisations. So I run a very small business. I have one employee, it's me. I have a very strong policy of not employing anyone because I've done all of that and I don't want all the rubbish that comes with that anymore. But I have a network of amazing humans that I bring as my tribe or as my squad as I do work. And I'm very conscious about who it is that I bring along with me, representing me and myself to my clients. And it is a very small group of people, and as long as they can broaden their network and bring that to my business as well, I'm really confident that we can be authentic and role model the behaviours that I think are really important. And on the point of choose to challenge, I have another very strong decision in my mindset now, is that I only want to work with people and customers that have the same value sets that I do. And that's very hard to determine, but I've got a pretty good radar these days, and I'm more confident to say no to business because it doesn't sit with what I think is right and what I think is good for my well-being and the well-being of people that work with me. And I'd rather refer that to somebody else and do my work that I love and work with organisations and people that I want to be around. The other role modelling piece that I just want to say too is that, so my daughter's 19, she's studying sport and exercise science at UTS. When it was my birthday a couple of weeks ago, she gave me a little book from, I think, Typo or one of those places. It was 30 Things I Love About You. And the last page said, you're a kick-ass CEO of your own life. So that was pretty good. I think I've done role modelling not too bad there. And then the final piece that I just wanted to talk through is it really does take a village for this stuff to work. Leanne's mentioned, I think Tricia and Elizabeth have also mentioned, really knowing who you go to within your village or community or your network in order that you can continue to thrive, not just survive. And I think there are ebbs and flows in that scenario of thriving and surviving. Sometimes you just get through the day. I woke up this morning, I was staying at Leanne's place. She left and I looked at my diary and I thought, oh crap, I forgot to send that note to the client this morning. So got ready really fast and pinged the note off to one of the ladies that works with me and said, oh dear, I missed this one. Can you fix it up for me and send it to the client? So my example there is knowing who your network is and who you reach out to support getting work done. My husband and I decided that quite a few years ago now that we had a very different perspective on house cleanliness. I decided that rather than go to marriage counselling, we got a cleaner, right? I know that's an easy thing to say, right? But every Wednesday, the amazing Anne comes and keeps me sane because she cleans my house for me. And she does pretty cool things in our life as well. But the example there is knowing that it does take a village. You know, I've had some amazing men role models in my life. The manager I had at Manpower Group for around 10 years, I sort of saw him like a big brother. He was pretty tough, put him in front of any customer and he'd hold his own with any organisation. But underneath he was pretty soft. He was a father and a grandfather at the time that the tail end of when I worked with him. And I remember sitting in his office one day, and at that time, I think I was in my mid to late 30s. And I've got this theory that in your 30s, particularly as a woman, there are 3 layers of the bubble. The outside has the ability to burst, which is your career, right? You can derail that and get back on track again. The middle one is your family. And I'm not saying that that's not precious and can't be burst, but but the really centre is you, right? And knowing what's going to break you is probably the most important in the outer 2 layers. And I remember sitting with my boss at the time, his name's Lincoln, and I was, you know, kids were young. I had a day job working in Australia. I had a global project that I was working on over 11 countries, and I had 15 people around the world working for me in different time zones. So I'd go to work in the morning. That was when you went to the office every day. I'd leave at 3, come home, do kid time. My husband's awesome, is the best, you know, cheerleader of my life. I'd go to bed at 7:30 at night and get up at 11 and work 2 hours on a global time scale, right? And I loved it. I thrived on it. But I remember sitting in his office one day and said, "You've nearly broken me." And he said, "Good, because now you know what you can do." Now, I didn't take that as offensive. I took that as, wow, this guy really knows what it takes to push someone to their best, and he did that for me. And if I can take one thing into my career and into the work that I do with women and for people in leadership is, if you're going to push someone, you've got to know the limit, and you've got to have the confidence to support that person if it starts to derail as well. So, you know, a couple little stories about me. Yep. Now, I just want to wrap up, and I think I've got some time, Leanne, haven't I? Yep. So what can we do about it? And it doesn't have to be big stuff, right? Sorry, in the corner. I think there's 4 key things, and there's no surprises here. So we need to learn how to get access to what it is that's going to make a difference to grow businesses or to support change or to support women or leadership in ways that has not been historically successful. So understanding what that can look like, going to your advisors, understanding what it is that you can access to support business. I think the second thing is really about understanding what your connections are and how to leverage those. I've never been really good at that. I'm a great networker, but I'm not a good salesperson. So my business has grown through the last few years based on my network, but I haven't really put myself out there as a salesperson. But my network is solid, and there's many people that I can call upon that, again, I think, should I make that call? Because what if they don't want to talk to me? What if they think I'm not senior enough? Or what if I'm not, in their sphere of, what's important? But I find myself, in scenarios where I do that, and people will give back because they want to. So I think that's really important to connect with great people. Diversity is a very interesting topic and discussion across not only society but within corporations and organisations. And the way that I see it, and I presume many others do, diversity is a seat at the table, but inclusion is having a voice at the table. That's the extension of diversity. You can have the most diverse group of people sitting in a room, but if they're not inclusively engaged to the conversation, to the plan, to the decision making, it is completely irrelevant. It's just a token. Back in the 1990s, there was the affirmative action reporting. Was anyone around then? Please, come on. Excellent. Where you had to report on how many females you had in positions, and you had to give that back to the legislative, whoever they were, to make sure that you're doing the right thing. Well, it's gone past that, right? Hopefully and thankfully, that many companies are really focused on inclusion. And it's not just about gender, it's about ethnicity, it's about all the things that we know that sit on the spectrum of diversity. But if it's not inclusive, it is irrelevant. So I think, when you're in a forum or you're in an environment, socially, professionally, when you think we've got this nailed because we've got the mix right, but 3 people are sitting at the table there, a metaphorical table or an actual table, and they're not speaking, you need to hear their voice and you need to ask for that. And then the final part is, we talked about STEM. One of my first clients when I was with Manpower Group was HP. The only thing I knew about IT was H and P. Because I had no background in technology, but what I did have was the ability to work with people and how to identify talent and how to get the right people into organisations. So I've come a long way since then. I'm certainly not much better at IT, but I understand the importance of investing in STEM, and particularly for women in the underrepresented industry sectors and professional clusters. Haven't spoken much about Elizabeth. Elizabeth was one of the first humans I saw grow up from a baby to an amazing young professional lady in an industry where she's pushing the norms, which is pretty awesome to see. So I think that as a friend and hopefully a mentor of Elizabeth, I rang her the other night and said, so what are you going to talk about on Wednesday morning? She's mumbled a couple of things at me and I thought, okay, she's got this all right. And thankfully, I just reached out. She knows that if I'm there, that I can support her and help her as well. But I think, the importance of STEM globally as a country, as a state, and as a region here in Kiama in the Illawarra, there's so much opportunity for our young citizens and our young female citizens that there's got to be a very direct dial shift on people in STEM within the professions that they represent as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed catching up with us 3 ladies this morning. I think Leanne's going to open up now to some Q&A, I think. Look, for me, the 3 things, just to repeat, is to know yourself, to role model, and understand that it takes a village for this stuff to function every single day, and you're not alone in doing that. So thank you for having me this morning, and enjoy the rest of your day, folks.